Laura was a realm of wonder. Magic pulsed through its very essence. It was a land where heroes rose and fell. At the heart of lore lived Mage Damon. He was renowned for his illusions. They were captivating and mesmerizing. Damon's magic was a spectacle. It could transport audiences to other worlds. It could evoke joy, sorrow, and fear. It was a power that set him apart. But a shadow fell over lore. A vampire plague began to spread. The knights of lore were valiant. They fought bravely against the creatures of darkness, but the plague was relentless. It threatened to consume everything. Damon knew he had to act. He had to find a way to stop the plague. Damon delved into the legend. He researched ancient texts and scrolls. He consulted with wise sages and hermits. Finally, he discovered the location of the portal to Evermore. It was hidden in the ruins of an ancient temple. Damon knew the journey would be perilous. He needed allies. He sought out the bravest knights in the realm. Sir Barnabas, a noble warrior, answered his call. Sir Damien, a skilled swordsman, joined them. Damon also sought the wisdom of the royal court. Princess Delphinia, known for her courage and intelligence, agreed to accompany them. Together, Damon, the knights, and the princess formed an alliance. They were ready to face the unknown. With a heavy heart, Damon turned his back on lore. He knew the fate of his homeland hung in the balance. He stepped into the portal, followed by his companions. They vanished into the swirling vortex. Evermore awaited. Bridge the Troll was an enigma. He was unlike any other troll in Evermore. He wasn't fond of rocks or mountains. He preferred the company of humans. But Bridge had a peculiar way of showing it. He made his home under the old stone bridge. It was a cozy spot, hidden from view. The bridge was old and sturdy. It had stood for centuries, its arches a testament to the skill of its builders. The river flowed beneath it, its waters a constant murmur in the troll's home. Bridge's dwelling was a sight to behold. It was cluttered with trinkets and treasures. He had collected them over the years from his adventures in Evermore and beyond. Each item had a story to tell. One particular item held a special place in Bridge's heart. It was a gnarled wooden club. It was adorned with a menacing skull at its tip. Bridge called it Kevin. Bridge confided in Kevin. He told the skull his secrets, his fears, and his dreams. Kevin never judged. The sun was setting. Bridge decided to take a stroll through Evermore. He emerged from his dwelling, his massive frame casting a long shadow. The townsfolk were used to his presence. They knew better than to take his words literally. When Bridge said, "You look absolutely dreadful," it was his way of saying hello. Bridge had a particular fondness for the marketplace. It was a bustling hub of activity. Merchants hawked their wares. Children chased each other through the stalls. The air was filled with the smells of fresh bread, roasted meat, and exotic spices. Bridge loved to barter. He would trade the trinkets he found for food and other necessities. The townsfolk were always happy to make a deal with him. As Bridge made his way through the marketplace, he overheard snippets of conversations. He learned of the Spider Princess's arrival. He heard tales of the Candy Witch and the Ghost Pirates. Bridge's curiosity was piqued. He decided to investigate further. He slipped away from the marketplace and into the shadows. He followed the whispers of magic and danger. They led him to the edge of town, to the border of the forest. There he sensed a presence, ancient and powerful. Bridge knew he was treading on dangerous ground, but he couldn't resist the allure of the unknown. He took a deep breath and stepped into the forest. The shadows deepened around him. The air grew heavy with the scent of pine needles and damp earth. Bridge could feel eyes watching him. The Spider Princess was lost. She had arrived in Evermore through the fractured portal. Her world, once familiar, was now strange and disorienting. Every step she took was fraught with uncertainty. Cora and Kendrick were her protectors. The knights from lore had sworn an oath to keep her safe. They stood by her side, their swords at the ready. Dante, the enigmatic sorcerer, watched over them. Dante's powers were vast. He struggled to contain the fracture. It threatened to unravel the fabric of both worlds. His wards flickered and strained against the encroaching darkness, but their efforts were being thwarted. The Candy Witch was relentless. She chipped away at Dante's wards, her laughter echoing through the fractured landscape. The ghost pirates added to the chaos. They had been imprisoned by Dante in a bottle. They were vengeful and mischievous. They delighted in tormenting the Spider Princess. In the heart of Evermore, Mage Damon sensed the disturbance. The arrival of the Spider Princess and the growing instability of the fracture filled him with unease. He watched the town closely. He noticed the subtle changes, the whispers of fear in the marketplace, the strange occurrences that defied explanation. The townsfolk were becoming afraid. They spoke of ghostly apparitions and spectral kidnappings. Children were warned to stay indoors after nightfall. The boundaries between reality and nightmare were blurring. Damon knew he had to act. The fracture was a threat to both Evermore and his own world of lore. He couldn't allow it to spread. He gathered his allies. They would need all their strength and cunning to face this new challenge. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance. Damon called a meeting in the town square. The townsfolk gathered, their faces etched with worry. They had heard the rumors. They knew something was amiss. Damon addressed the crowd. His voice was calm and steady, but his words carried a sense of urgency. "My friends," he began, "we face a grave threat. The fracture between worlds is widening. It brings with it creatures of darkness and chaos." Damon explained the situation. He spoke of the Spider Princess, the Candy Witch, and the Ghost Pirates. He told them of the danger they were all in. "We must stand together," Damon urged. "We must face this threat head-on. The fate of Evermore, and perhaps even the world beyond, depends on it." The townsfolk listened intently. They had faced many challenges in the past. They had always overcome them. They would do so again. The mystic's tent stood at the edge of Evermore. It was a place of shadows and secrets. The air within the tent was thick with the scent of incense and herbs. Strange symbols adorned the walls. 3 figures moved within the tent: Mela, Deimos, and Cal. They were mystics, seekers of forbidden knowledge. They had come to Evermore in search of immortality. Mela was the most driven of the 3. She was obsessed with the idea of living forever. She had spent years studying ancient texts, searching for a way to cheat death. Deimos was more cautious. He was drawn to power, but he was also aware of the risks involved in dabbling in the dark arts. He watched Mela closely, his expression unreadable. Cal was the most enigmatic of the 3. He seemed to view the pursuit of immortality as a game, a way to amuse himself. He enjoyed toying with people's minds, planting seeds of doubt and desire. The 3 mystics had heard whispers of a powerful artifact. It was said to be hidden somewhere in Evermore. It was called the Heart of Loudon. Legend had it that the Heart of Loudon could grant immortality to whoever possessed it, but it was also said to be cursed. It could corrupt the soul, twisting it into something monstrous. Mela was determined to find the Heart of Loudon. She believed it was the key to achieving her dream of eternal life. Deimos was hesitant, but he couldn't deny the allure of such power. Cal, as always, was amused by the situation. He enjoyed watching Mela and Deimos become consumed by their desires. He knew it would lead to their downfall. The mystics began their search. They questioned the townsfolk, scoured ancient ruins, and ventured into the depths of the forest. But the Heart of Loudon remained elusive. One night, as the moon hung heavy in the sky, the mystics stumbled upon a hidden chamber. It was located beneath the old stone bridge, in the heart of Bridge's dwelling. The chamber was filled with strange symbols and markings. In the center of the chamber was an altar, and on that altar lay a small heart-shaped stone. The mystics knew they had found the Heart of Loudon. Mela's eyes gleamed with triumph. She reached for the stone, but Deimos stopped her. "Wait," he said. "We cannot simply take the heart. We must perform the ritual." Mela hesitated, then reluctantly agreed. She knew that Deimos was right. The ritual was long and complex. It involved chanting ancient incantations, drawing intricate patterns in the air with their hands, and offering a sacrifice to the dark forces that governed life and death. Mage Damon stood on the deck of the Black Siren. The ship cut through the waves with a grace that belied its fearsome reputation. The salt spray stung his face, and the wind whipped at his robes. Captain Pitt Plum, a grizzled veteran of countless voyages, stood before him. His one good eye gleamed with amusement. "So you fancy yourself a pirate, eh, mage?" he growled, his voice rough as sandpaper. Damon met his gaze, his own resolve unwavering. "I am here to learn, Captain," he replied, his voice steady despite the rolling of the deck beneath his feet. "To prove my worth." Plum barked out a laugh, a sound like a flock of crows taking flight. "Prove your worth, you say? Then let's see what you're made of, landlubber." He gestured to the crew, a motley bunch of hardened sea dogs. Damon's first task was simple. He was to make a trade at the next port. It was a test of his wit and his ability to blend in. Damon was a master of illusion, but could he fool seasoned merchants? His second task was more challenging. Captain Plum gave him a map. It was marked with symbols that only a pirate could decipher. It led to a series of hidden flags scattered across remote islands. Damon knew that to survive in this world, he needed to learn to fight. He had magic at his disposal, but a true pirate relied on more than just spells. He needed to master the art of the blade. Captain Plum had recommended a mentor. "Seek out Captain Shadow Ford," he'd said, a rare note of respect in his voice. "He'll teach you what it means to dance with death." Damon found Ford on a secluded island, shrouded in mist and legend. The captain was a figure of myth and rumor, a ghost who walked among the living. He moved with a grace that belied his age, his every step precise and deliberate. "You wish to learn the pirate's dance?" Ford asked, his voice a low rasp. His eyes, sharp as cutlasses, seemed to pierce through Damon's facade. Damon nodded, his expression serious. "I do, Captain. I wish to learn to defend myself, to fight alongside your crew." Ford smiled, a chillingly predatory expression. "Then let us begin." Section 3. A Pirate's Mettle. Ford's training was grueling. He pushed Damon to his limits, testing his endurance, his reflexes, his very will. Damon spent hours practicing his footwork, learning to move with the fluidity of water, the unpredictability of the wind. He sparred with Ford, their blades clashing in the twilight. The captain was a master of his art, his movements swift and deadly. Damon relied on his magic to augment his speed and agility, but it was not enough. "Magic is a tool, mage," Ford said, parrying a blow that would have cleaved another man in two, "but it is your heart, your spirit, that will determine your fate on the high seas." Damon learned to fight dirty, to use his environment to his advantage. He learned the value of timing, of precision, of striking when his opponent least expected it. He learned that a pirate's greatest weapon was not his sword, but his mind. He proved himself in battle, facing down monstrous sea creatures and rival pirate crews. He fought with a ferocity he never knew he possessed, his magic and his blade working in tandem. Section 1. A Covenant of Shadows. The moon cast an ethereal glow upon Evermore, its silvery light seeping through the cracks of the mystic's tent. Inside, Deimos, Cal, and Mela reveled in their newfound immortality. They were predators, forever bound to the shadows, their thirst for blood and insatiable hunger. Their transformation had been swift and absolute. The ritual, fueled by the heart of Loudon and their own desires, had irrevocably altered their very essence. They were no longer mere mystics seeking immortality, they were vampires, creatures of the night. Deimos, his eyes now glowing with an unnatural intensity, surveyed his companions. His mind, once consumed by the pursuit of power, was now sharp and focused, his senses heightened to an almost unbearable degree. "We are bound to this path now," he said, his voice a low, resonant murmur that seemed to vibrate in the air around them. "Our destinies intertwined." Cal, his usual amusement tinged with a predatory edge, nodded slowly. "Indeed, brother," he replied, his gaze lingering on Mela for a moment too long. "The game has only just begun." Mela, her ethereal beauty now even more pronounced, remained silent. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, exhilaration at the power coursing through her veins, trepidation at the darkness she could feel encroaching upon her soul, and a strange, unsettling hunger that gnawed at her insides. Section 2. The Spider's Allure. Their newfound unity was not one of friendship or camaraderie, but rather a shared hunger and an unspoken agreement to exploit the unsuspecting world around them. They were predators and Evermore was their hunting ground. They set their sights on the most influential figures in Evermore, those whose conversion would grant them power and control over the town. And at the top of their list was the Spider Princess, an enigma shrouded in mystery and ancient magic. Her knowledge, her very essence, would be a prize beyond measure, Demas mused, his eyes gleaming with avarice as he envisioned the Spider Princess bound to their will, her power flowing through their veins. A tempting morsel indeed. Cal purred, his silver tongue already crafting the web of words he would use to ensnare her, to lure her into their embrace. Mela, however, felt a flicker of hesitation. The Spider Princess, despite her otherworldly appearance, possessed a certain innocence, a naivete that stirred a long-forgotten sense of protectiveness within Mela's newly awakened heart. Their plan was as intricate and delicate as a spider's web, each thread carefully woven to ensnare their prey. Deimos, with his newfound influence, would subtly guide the Spider Princess towards their lair, planting seeds of curiosity and desire. Cal, the master manipulator, would spin tales of ancient knowledge and forbidden power, appealing to the Spider Princess's thirst for wisdom and understanding. He would paint a picture of a world where she could embrace her true potential, a world where she would rule alongside them, forever young, forever powerful. Mela, conflicted but ultimately bound to her new nature, would offer companionship and understanding. She would be the Spider Princess's confidant, her guide through the treacherous waters of immortality, all the while subtly manipulating her, drawing her closer to the point of no return. And so, under the watchful gaze of the moon, the vampire mystics of Evermore began their insidious game, their whispers of seduction weaving a tapestry of darkness that threatened to consume the very soul of the unsuspecting Spider Princess. Alistair, the dragon trainer, stood before the crowd. He was a figure of authority and wisdom, his weathered face etched with the stories of 1,000 adventures. He cleared his throat and silence fell upon the gathered townsfolk. "Gather round, friends," he boomed, his voice resonating with the strength of the dragons he so revered. "For tonight I shall tell you a tale of courage, compassion, and the enduring bond between humans and dragons." He paused, allowing his words to hang in the air, building anticipation for the story to come. The townsfolk, young and old, leaned in closer, their eyes wide with fascination. "This," he began, his voice softening, "is the tale of Anderon, the mightiest dragon to ever grace the skies of Evermore." Anderon, Alistair explained, was a dragon of immense size and power. His scales shimmered like 1,000 sunsets. His eyes blazed with ancient wisdom, and his roar could shake the very mountains to their core. But even a dragon as magnificent as Anderon was not immune to misfortune. One fateful day, as Anderon soared through the heavens, his heart alight with joy, tragedy struck. He had been distracted by the beauty of the setting sun, its golden rays painting the clouds in hues of orange and purple, and in his moment of inattention, he failed to notice the towering pine tree that stood in his path. With a sickening crunch, Anderon's claws snagged on the tree's highest branches, the sharp wood piercing deep into his flesh. The pain was blinding, like a bolt of lightning searing through his very being. Anderon roared in agony, his cry echoing across the land, a sound that sent shivers down the spines of all who heard it. The villagers, hearing the dragon's distress call, knew they had to act. Fear warred with compassion in their hearts. Dragons were creatures of immense power, both revered and feared. Yet the villagers recognized the desperation in Anderon's cry, the raw agony that resonated through his very being, and so, led by the bravest among them, they ventured into the forest, their simple tools clutched tightly in their hands, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. Section 3. The Order of the Emerald Sky. They found Anderon trapped in the heart of the forest, his massive form entangled in the branches of the ancient pine. The sight of the majestic creature brought tears to their eyes, his pain palpable in the air around them. Without hesitation, they set to work, their fear forgotten in the face of such suffering. They chopped and hacked at the branches, their axes ringing against the tough wood. They worked tirelessly, their movements driven by a shared sense of purpose and compassion. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last branch gave way and Anderon was free. He roared once more, this time not in pain but in gratitude, his massive head dipping low as if to acknowledge the courage of the tiny creatures who had come to his aid. It was from that day forward, Alistair explained, his voice filled with reverence, that the bond between humans and dragons was solidified. The villagers' act of courage had not gone unnoticed, and in their compassion they had earned the respect and loyalty of the dragon kind. And so, the Order of the Emerald Sky was formed, a brotherhood of those who dedicated their lives to the protection and understanding of dragons. The burrows hummed with a nervous energy. The Frostweaver Queen had arrived. Her presence was a beacon of hope in the face of the storm that raged outside. Her magic was a shield, protecting Evermore from the elements. Citizens gathered. They came from every corner of the town. They sought shelter from the storm. They yearned for the Queen's wisdom. They hoped for a chance to join her ranks. The Frostweavers were a revered guild. They were masters of ice and snow. They were protectors of Aurora, the land beyond Evermore. Their magic was both beautiful and deadly. The Queen stood before the crowd. Her eyes as blue as glacial ice surveyed the room. She radiated power, her every movement both graceful and commanding. Beside her, a brazier burned, its flames dancing in defiance of the storm. "The storm rages," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. It was a voice that spoke of ancient power, of blizzards and frozen wastelands, but fear not, for within these walls you're safe. The townsfolk relaxed. The Queen's words were a balm to their anxieties. They had weathered many storms, but none as fierce as this. The Queen raised her hands. A hush fell over the crowd. Even the brazier seemed to still its flames, as if in reverence. "Tonight," she continued, "we initiate new members into our ranks. Tonight, we share the gift of the Frost Weavers." Excitement rippled through the crowd. To become a Frost Weaver was a great honor. It was a chance to wield magic, to protect Aurora, to become something more than ordinary. The Queen gestured towards the brazier. "The heart of the storm burns within this flame. It is the source of our power. It is the price of our protection." She turned to the recruits, those who had been chosen to receive the gift. "Step forward," she commanded. "Embrace the storm within." The recruits approached the brazier. They were a diverse group, young and old, rich and poor, human and otherwise, but they were united by a single desire, to serve Aurora, to become Frost Weavers. One by one, the recruits knelt before the brazier. The Queen touched each one on the forehead, her fingers cold as ice. As she did, a spark of blue fire ignited above their heads, dancing like a miniature blizzard. The initiates gasped. They could feel the magic coursing through their veins, cold and exhilarating. It was a power unlike anything they had ever known. "Go now," the Queen said. "Embrace your destiny. Protect Aurora from the shadows that threaten to consume it." The recruits rose, their faces flushed with excitement and trepidation. They were Frost Weavers now. The storm raged outside, but within the burrows, a new chapter had begun. The citizens of Evermore cheered. They knew that with the Frost Weavers at their side, they could weather any storm. Hope, like a snowflake, drifted through the air. Twilight painted the sky in hues of purple and orange. A chill wind howled through the ancient ruins, carrying with it the scent of decay and magic. Mage Damon stood among the unseelie fae, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. He had journeyed far, faced countless dangers to reach this moment. He had proven his worth to the unseelie court, completing their tasks with a mix of cunning and determination. Now the final test awaited him. Torin, the enigmatic leader of the unseelie fae, stood before him. His eyes, like molten gold, seemed to burn with an inner fire. He raised his hands, his long skeletal fingers tipped with claws that glinted in the fading light. "Damon!" Torin's voice was a low rasp, echoing through the ruins like the whisper of the wind. "You have come seeking knowledge, seeking power." Damon met his gaze, his own expression resolute. "I have, Torin," he replied, his voice steady despite the unease that gnawed at his gut. "I seek the strength to protect my world, the wisdom to combat the darkness that threatens to consume it." Torin nodded slowly, a knowing smile playing on his lips. The path you seek is fraught with peril, mage. It is a path that few dare to tread, a path that will test your very soul. Torin gestured towards a stone altar in the center of the ruins. It was ancient and weathered, its surface covered in strange symbols that seemed to writhe and shift in the flickering light of the torches that surrounded it. Upon this altar, Torin continued, his voice taking on a hypnotic cadence. The line between life and death blurs. Here we commune with the spirits of those who have gone before, drawing upon their power to fuel our own. He stepped closer to Damon, his eyes boring into his very essence. Are you prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice, mage? To bind yourself to the forces that govern this sacred ground? Damon hesitated, a shiver running down his spine. He had faced death before, stared into the abyss of the unknown, yet there was something about Torin's words, about the atmosphere that permeated the ruins, that filled him with a primal fear he couldn't quite place. I am, Damon finally replied, his voice barely a whisper. Torin smiled, a chillingly predatory expression. Then step forward, child of magic, he said, stepping aside to reveal the altar in all its eerie glory, and embrace your destiny. Damon approached the altar, his steps slow and measured. As he drew closer, the air grew thick with anticipation, the silence broken only by the crackling of the torches and the beating of his own heart. He could feel the weight of the unseelie Fae's gazes upon him, their eyes burning with a mixture of curiosity and something darker, something that sent a shiver down his spine. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the cold, rough surface of the stone. A jolt of energy surged through him, sending a shockwave of power that made him gasp in surprise. The symbols on the altar flared to life, bathing the ruins in an eerie, otherworldly light. "Repeat after me!" Torin's voice boomed, echoing through the ruins, each word imbued with ancient power. "And swear your allegiance to the unseelie court." Damon hesitated, a flicker of doubt momentarily eclipsing his resolve. Could he do this? Could he surrender himself to these creatures of darkness, even if it meant gaining the power he so desperately craved? The air crackled with energy. The ancient runes on the altar pulsed with an eerie light. Damon stood at a crossroads. Before him lay the path to unimaginable power, but the price was his freedom, his very soul. He thought of Laura, his homeland, ravaged by the vampire plague. He thought of the Spider Princess, lost and confused in this strange new world. He thought of the citizens of Evermore, their fates hanging in the balance, the weight of their hopes and fears pressed down on him. Damon realized that power meant nothing without the will to use it for good. He had come to Evermore seeking a weapon, but he had found something far more valuable, a purpose. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and spoke. "I will not be bound," he said, his voice echoing through the ruins. "I choose my own destiny." The unseelie Fae gasped. Torin's eyes widened in surprise. For the first time in centuries, someone had defied them, had rejected their offer of power. The runes on the altar dimmed, the eerie light faded. The unseelie Fae closed in on Damon, their eyes burning with anger and betrayal. "You dare defy us!" Torin roared, his voice shaking the very foundations of the ruins. "You who are nothing! Who have nothing!" Damon stood his ground. He reached deep within himself, drawing upon the magic that flowed through his veins. It was a different kind of magic now, not the cold, calculating power of the unseelie Fae, but something warmer, something more human. "I am Damon," he said, his voice ringing with newfound strength, "and I will not be a pawn in your games." The vortex of energy expanded, pushing back the unseelie Fae. They hissed and snarled, their claws scraping against the stone floor, but they could not break through. Damon turned away from the unseelie Fae. He had made his choice. He would not succumb to the darkness. He would find his own path, forge his own destiny. He walked away from the ruins, leaving the unseelie Fae to their anger and their shadows. He had a long journey ahead of him, but he was no longer alone. He had made allies in Evermore, friends who had taught him the true meaning of courage and sacrifice. He would return to lore stronger and wiser than before. He would face the vampire plague head-on, not with the cold power of the unseelie fae, but with the warmth of his own heart, the strength of his own will. The chronicles of lore and Evermore were far from over. The tapestry of fate was ever weaving, its threads twisting and turning in ways no one could predict. But one thing was certain: Damon's journey had just begun. The adventures that awaited him were as limitless as his imagination, as boundless as the magic that flowed through his veins.